The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Well, the governor issued his first veto on a Thursday. It came on day 116 of the session. It was tying the national popular vote to, or our electoral votes to the national popular vote. Mike, this is something that a lot of the Democrats, most of the Democrats did vote for up in Carson City, but it seems like there wasn't wide Democratic support for the bill. Is that fair?
I think that's absolutely fair, Patrick. I think that that's symptomatic of the messaging surrounding the bill. I think that what we've seen in the interim time between the veto and the vote is that even the supporters of the bill, a lot of them didn't quite understand the actual text and the context of the bill, what it meant, what it was going to do. And so I think it's unsurprising with that lack of clarity that we saw what happened today.
Alan, what did you think about seeing that? I know that that was a bill you weren't happy about initially. Were you surprised that the governor issued his veto on that?
I was very satisfied. That was a wise thing. He should have vetoed it. I disagree on one thing, because I think that people did understand it. I think that people understood that it was an attempt to, as an end run around the Electoral College, because we couldn't overturn the Electoral College in time to get Trump out of there. Maybe not even, you know, after him serving a second term and another Republican coming in. So that bothered a lot of people, and so this was an end run attempt. Problem with it, of course, was that it was also, I think, verged on being unconstitutional. At least, had it gone through, it would have wound up in the courts. A compact, as is defined by the federal government, is something that has to be ratified by the U.S. Senate. And so even if enough states participated in it where you had 270 electoral votes, you still couldn't initiate it until the compact, which is what it was, is ratified by the government. And the government never would have ratified something like that. So this whole thing has been a big PR effort from people who are from the far, far left. Like you said, a lot of Democrats came out and they said they were against it, as well as they should be. So kudos to them. Kudos to the governor for doing the right thing. So this chalks up his credibility a little bit in my eyes.
It has been interesting to follow along with how education funding has played out, especially over the last couple of weeks. The numbers have varied as far as how much new money has been freed up. We've seen that the schools account, the DSA, the distributive schools account, that cap has gone up by a pretty good margin, a couple $100 a student based on where everything was back in January. All of that being said, whether it's $220, $250 more million, whatever, the school district gets $62 million more. They're happy they're getting more, but not completely happy. The unions aren't quite happy. Is there a discrepancy between how much money is available and how much more should be going to schools?
Oh, without a doubt. Right. I mean, I think unequivocally it's time to stop playing games with education funding in this state and take public education seriously, which apparently is quite a novel idea here, because we seem to go through this every 2 years. We just go round and round and round on this merry-go-round, and you know, I think the people of Nevada, our teachers, our students, we want off the merry-go-round. It's, you know, the exact numbers, you know, 62 million is not good enough. Sorry, just straight up. Is it more? Great. But we're nowhere near funding education the way we should be. We should be taking it seriously and not using it as a political pawn. And frankly, this one, much like the veto, this rests straight on the governor's desk. There's no one else to blame. He put the legislature in a box on this in his very, very first State of the Union, or State of the State, rather, I apologize, when he said that he absolutely would not raise taxes. So now you're seeing budget shenanigans all over the place with less than a week to go. And frankly, I think that that's unacceptable. And that Nevadans and our teachers and our students and our parents, I'm a parent, my kid is going to be headed into the Clark County School District down here. She deserves better. Everybody deserves better than this. One interesting thing, Alan, the school safety shrinkage in the proposal by $30 million, that money comes back, but it's tied to the modified business tax being extended. Democrats wanting a Republican vote there to make it
so it wouldn't, if it got challenged unsuccessfully or successfully in the court, it wouldn't matter if you had your 2/3 vote. The more cops tax now, leftover money, half of that can go toward school police officers. But all of that being said, what is your perspective on this latest round of attempts to continue funding increases in education?
Let me start the last one, work backwards. First of all, the more cops tax, I think that was only applicable if if Metro was not able to use all the funds. I can't imagine that they won't be able to use all those funds. We need more police on the street. We need more police in general. So I'm not sure that any of the more cops tax money, any of it, will go to funding the schools, nor should it, by the way. I mean, this is a separate issue. I voted certainly to raise the tax for the more cops. I didn't vote for it for any other purpose, but more cops in the street. So let's get clear on that. Number two, I think that the issue of the 2/3 is almost, or one, a simple majority to extend the taxes is more of a message to conservatives, Republicans, and those who are more economically conservative, like Steve Sisolak, by the way, who is much more economically conservative, that never vote for a tax increase that has a sunset provision on it, assuming that it will be sunsetted someday. Because since '09, every time a sunset tax has come up, 2009, it has gone on and on and on, and we've put it in as part of the budget forever. So they don't go away. If I was up there as legislator, I'd never vote for a tax increase that said it's a sunset, provision in there. Now, if something came up where I had to vote for something, God forbid, that was regarding a disaster or something like that, that's one thing. But don't ever tell me if there's a sunset provision. That's a lie, an absolute lie. The governor, by the way, is much more economically conservative. And so I'm not surprised that he is trying to balance this whole thing. He said he wouldn't raise taxes. God bless him for that. He shouldn't raise taxes. We have enough taxes going on right now. And contrary to what Bernie might say, not everything's free. All right, so let's be honest about that. It's not free. Somebody's got to pay the pauper at some point.
Alan said something that struck me, and all of that is that he voted for a tax increase.
Right. I think that's the most stunning news of the day here.
The first role of government, as I've said many times in this show, is the protection of the people. Whether it's the federal, the state, the county, the city, or whatever it is, we need to first make sure that our military, our police, our sheriff's departments, whatever they are, HP, highway patrols, and these people should be funded before anything else, because without them as protection, you can forget everything else.
And it is worth noting, and again, I know that all of this, much like the veto this morning, everything's moving very, very quickly. Late last night, they actually came to the table. The peace officers actually came to the table in support of this measure. So they have actually signed off on it, and they're supporting it going forward. The MDT and the cops money
moving the more cops tax
coming across. They actually testified in support of it last night. So again, not that changes anything, but I do think that it is worth noting that they are in fact on board with this.
I want to bring up, speaking along safety and some of the roles, gun legislation going through, just in talking with a lot of people in Carson City. AB 291, Sandra Hargey's bill. That bill kind of fell apart, got an exemption or a waiver rather, was pushed. This almost didn't happen. Talk to me a little bit about the preemption law that was surrounding all of this, and repealing that, at least, kind of pulling that out of the language of the bill. What does it look like to you? Is there enough of a compromise to get something like that passed?
Yeah, the first thing that I'm going to say on this is Assemblywoman Jauregui has been an absolute stalwart in this, and I have boundless respect for what she did with this. She put in so much work at the beginning of this to actually craft a good law, right? And this is absolutely symptomatic of what happens when outside special interest groups come in and attempt to hijack the process, okay? I understand that there were concerns over preemption in Clark County specifically, and I understand those concerns. I absolutely do. I understand that SHOT and NSSF and some of our labor folks were deeply concerned about that, and I think that that's valid. What I find to be completely unacceptable is taking pieces of policy that were worked on, right, with all the stakeholders, and swapping it out for something like what they did here with red flag, right, with emergency protection orders, right. Let's be very clear about what we're talking about with these changes, okay? We're talking about setting up a legal structure for the seizure of private property, and doing it in a very sly, very cynical manner. This is an absolute example of the kind of backroom dealings that if you ask any sane human being, discuss them about our legal process. So again, the fact that this is where we are right now is extremely disappointing, to say the least. There was so much work put into this with all the stakeholders, and making sure that we were going about things the right way. And as of now, you know, I don't know that there's any other way to describe this as, you know, other than this is a complete mess now. And it's incredibly disappointing as someone who was involved in this process as early as March of this year, to have this kind of chicanery happen at the end with days and hours left in the session. You know, we just found out about that language, the actual text of that language, yesterday. And that's absolutely unacceptable. And once again, I will say that Nevadans deserve better than this.
It seems like there are some areas of all of this that you would be in agreement on. I mean, this had some common sense that the bump stock ban was going to be included as part of this. The idea of the red flag intervention, I would think that would be something of concern, seizure of property, a gun seizure essentially. I could see that there would be some issues from your side as well, Alan.
Well, if we go back first of all to the bump stock issue. Personally, I didn't care about the bump stock issue. I heard it ruins guns and stuff like that. Wouldn't want to ever use one myself. However, I think it's fallacious to think that if you get rid of bump stocks that your problem is solved, because I've been told by those who know much more about gun construction than I do that you can still modify semi-automatics in order to make them automatic certain ways. I don't know how to do it. I'm not interested in learning, but I understand it can still be done. So if you think that banning bump stocks is going to take care of the problem, I think people are misleading themselves. One. Number two, the red flag issue. You're absolutely right on that one. It's not whether or not people who should not have a gun should be relieved of their gun. It's the process that is gone through. You can make an accusation, but you know, unless someone is, like, say, proven guilty in a court, you know, they're not convicted. Unless someone is proved to be not worthy, dysfunctional, a problem, not to have a gun, then an accusation in and of itself brought by the authorities and okayed by a judge without the individual being allowed to represent themselves in a defensive manner, to me, is basically unconstitutional. And I think that would have been I think that'll be thrown out once it's signed. It'll be signed, but I think that it will be thrown out as unconstitutional. Three, when you come to the ridiculous idea of this locality allowing local municipalities and counties and whatever to initiate their own gun laws. So that means if I have my CCW, my gun on me, and I go from one city, and I missed where it said you're entering North Las Vegas or some other place, all of a sudden I'm breaking the law. In other words, things all of a sudden are changing. Plus, it would allow someone like Tick Seegerblum, I mean, you know, Tok had this idea of himself that he wanted to make it on major holidays illegal he wanted to make the Strip a gun-free zone. That's what he wanted to do. Great idea, just fantastic. Advertise to all the insane people out there who want to do harm that the good guys are not carrying guns on the Strip, like New Year's Eve and stuff like that. But the bad guys, obviously, they'll pay attention to the law, right? They're not. And so I think it makes it much more dangerous. I don't think Tok really thought about what he was doing at the time. You know, he's pretty stoned usually, so obviously he wasn't giving a whole lot of thought to it. No, I mean, let's be honest. Come on, nice guy, but you know, it's legal, man. What can I say? So this is what he was going to do. Fortunately, that was thrown out. The red flag will be thrown out. The bump stock will pass. That'll wind up passing, and then I'll feel so much safer. Oh, I'll feel a whole lot safer, yeah.
I want to get your opinion because you've been through the process before.
Yes.
Just the reason we're having the conversation, a lot of these things happening at the end of the session.
Yes.
That's not a surprise. That happens every year. Things come
Absolutely.
together. You talk about money, funding, and all of that. But how does this year compare to other sessions that you've been involved in your opinion?
The word that I would use to describe the sense in the building up there, because I've heard it so often this session, is grim, which is a little surprising considering the majorities that are held up there by the Democrats and including the governor's mansion, et cetera. I think people are a little surprised by how much of a mess this session's been. Now,
when you say people are saying grim, you're talking about on the Democratic side or progressive side as well as?
I'm talking about across the board.
Okay.
I have never gotten a sense to date of this level of discontent both in the building, in our communities. I actually had a chance to talk to some folks that don't agree with me on the gun bill. Every single person that I've talked to about this session has not had a very positive opinion about what's going on. And I think it's worth noting, by the way, that Speaker Frierson has actually done an exceptional job. You see the Assembly working very, very well right now. They are doing every single thing that they can to do the people's work. But I think that you're seeing a little bit of a breakdown in the process up there, and things are not going as smoothly as they have in the past.
You've been around for a while as well, Alan, so you've seen this conversation happen every couple of years. Just as you've watched kind of the sausage making happen, are you surprised, or what's your reaction?
No, I really am not. I know you have a majority of all Democrats are controlling the legislature and the governor's office and all constitutional offices. Republicans did the same thing in 2014. They controlled everything, and yet there was an extended session, if my mind correctly goes back. So I mean, this does happen. Part of it, and I'm glad. Part of it is because we have a limited legislative session every other year, and I want to keep it that way. I know there are some people who want an annual session all year
Just
round.
for the record, I'm one of them. We disagree on that.
Well,
which is fair.
I came from the left coast, and California has an ongoing legislature, and they've driven themselves into the biggest hole. The more that they are in session, the more money people have to pay, the fewer freedoms that are out there for individuals. We need less legislation, not more. So the idea is that we are in a limited session, and that limited session does mean that you have to work like hell in order to be able to get things done. Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. I'm not surprised about any of how it's gone this year. I'm not surprised how many things Democrats didn't get. Republicans didn't get everything they wanted in 2014 or 2016. I mean, it just didn't happen that way. Or actually, it was not 14, it was 15 and 17.
Yeah.
The elections were. So, I mean, for me, I look at it and think to myself, this is how it's supposed to be. Nothing is supposed to be easy to glide through. It should be that way on a federal level, by the way, as well. That, you should have to fight like mad in order to get what you want done. Because I don't think anything should be easy to push through. I'd be very scared if that's happened. It's happened in my lifetime before, and it has portended very, very ugly things.
Well, let's leave it there for this week. I appreciate you both coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks.